Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic with Chris Cox. This is such an exciting episode because not only did I watch some of Chris's TV spots when I was a kid, but also I got a chance to work with Chris inside of Upgrade Academy, and he is just doing constantly incredible things, from being on The Illusionist to crushing it with virtual shows to being on television. We talk about all of that and more, and specifically, we talk about his unique style and take on mentalism, not taking himself too seriously and making sure the audience has a whole lot of fun. I think you're going to love this episode. I know I did. Here it is, a wonderful conversation with the one and only Chris Cox. Chris Cox. Chris, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good. I'm delighted to be here. I look forward to listening to myself when I normally listen to this podcast every week, and I'll just skip this episode, like I'm sure lots of you are doing right now.
Well, no one, if they're skipping it, then they didn't hear you say that. But I don't think that people should skip it because there's a ton to talk about. And thank you so much. It means the world that you're a listener, and we've worked together and communicated and done a whole bunch of fun stuff before. But super, super excited to have you here, especially you were up to amazing stuff. And then the pandemic happened. And then in the pandemic, you're up to amazing stuff. And you are planning your great escape as well. And kind of all three of, that all kind of happened simultaneously. So I'd love to talk about it. Let's go way back. Let's first talk about, let's go a little back and then we'll go way back. Let's talk about kind of just the pandemic moment for a second. So talk about where you were and then kind of what happened, because it's the elephant in the room and we gotta talk about it.
Let's get it out of the way. So I was in the middle of a US tour with the Illusionists. So I'd literally come off the back of sort of a non-stop kind of 2-3 years. So I'd done a US tour, I'd then done an Australian tour with them, I'd then done a Reno residency, I'd done the West End, I'd done Broadway, was starting a US tour that was going to run us through to kind of the summer, and then we were starting to talk about what was going to happen the rest of the year. So we were in March, we were about halfway into it. We'd just done all the real slog of it, like all of the Midwest America, freezing cold Butte, Montana, lots of one-nighters, and we're about to have a week off. I was going to go home, see my family, then go back out, and it was going to be a lovely end of the tour with a month or two in Arizona, California, 3-nighters, 4-nighters, ending at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood, like all of these great things. Yeah, then they were like, okay, tonight is your last show in Oklahoma City. Tomorrow night's meant to be an arena show in Texas. That's off. Tonight's your last show. Fly home. Hopefully we'll be back sometime soon. So I took some props home, left some, which are currently in a warehouse somewhere in America. And we're like, we'll be back on the road by the summer. And we're still waiting.
Wild turn of events. Let's go.
Also, yeah, like literally, I was like, sent someone out. We luckily on the Illusions, we have a runner in each venue, and was like, go buy me as many tote boxes as you can, because somehow I've got to try and get this stuff home now that would normally live in warehouses and on trucks.
But it's still there.
It's still, some of it stayed there because I was like, this can stay there. I'll just take home stuff just in case in terrible totes, which turns out I should have not gone for the cheap ones because they all split on the plane. There you go. There's the first bit of advice. At the end, when you go, if there's one thing people should remember from this, the thing is, don't buy cheap totes.
Don't. Well, it's wild kind of moment in time, which is crazy, I think, for all magicians. Everyone's got their like pandemic story, and that's a really crazy one, especially because, there was so much going on in the zeitgeist where magic was just happening, like theater tours, touring, and America's Got Talent and Fool Us, and everything was like at its peak. Anybody who was putting on magic shows in their city was selling them out. Like there really was this like peak of excitement, and then like poof, it all changed. So we'll get back.
There was all that momentum, and then it just ground to a complete halt.
Just completely to a halt. And you actually did some amazing stuff with it inside of virtual and just figured out how to reinvent. And right now, you and I are both talking to each other from our virtual studios, which is kind of a funny thing.
We're eyeing up each other's backdrops, going, you've got the tarbells in yours, I see.
Well, we're doing the tarbell challenge with magicians, one tarbell a month and one trick from each one. And we're doing it on YouTube with the Toronto Magic Company. So if you're bored,
I love that. What a great idea.
If you want to grab a book and you got to come up with a trick and you got a month to do it, that's it. So let's go all the way back. Let's go back to the very beginning. How did you get started in magic?
So I was always a kid who loved performing more than anything else. I used to write TV shows to try and get on them. I went to like drama schools. I kind of was in my first professional production of a musical when I was about 9, I think, and just always loved performing. And unfortunate thing is I can't really sing. I definitely can't sing. I can't really act and I can't dance. Otherwise, I'd be in musical theatre. But I'm sort of funny, but I wasn't funny enough to be a stand-up. Or at least when I tried stand-up when I was 16, I was like, I'm not the guy for this. But I always loved magic. But I didn't really know about magic clubs and magic societies. We used to go to London, we'd visit the toy shop, I'd get a magic trick from there. And that was my introduction to magic. But quite in my sort of early teens, I discovered mentalism and was instantly like, oh, this is the one for me. Because I realized that it's all performance. Method is by the by, really, with mentalism. It's all performance. And the thing I loved most was performing. And so then while at university, I was putting on a lot of shows there and always wanted to go and take a show to the Edinburgh Festival. So I used my student loan for my final year of uni. I saved that up and went to do my first Edinburgh Fringe show. That went well. I then did a second one and ended up doing 5 shows over 8 or 9 years, I think it was. And each kind of thing led to a different thing. But yeah, it's very much someone who is a performer and an entertainer who does magic. And specifically, all I do is mentalism and mind reading. So yeah, that's kind of how I discovered it all.
So, you mentioned that you were buying tricks. You didn't really know about the magic like community and stuff like that. But it seems now that like obviously you're friends with magicians, but you're not hanging around magic clubs all that much. And it doesn't seem like that was a large part of your journey. So I'd love to hear about how did you start connecting to magicians? Was it through books? Was it through one-on-ones? Or were there some places in your area geographically or even online that got you access?
Yeah, that's a good question actually, because I'm not sure. Let me think back. Because yeah, I definitely not sort of societies or clubs or anything. It's even now. It's like I only joined I'm a member of the Magic Circle, and the truth is, I joined because it was cheaper to join and read the book in the library than buy the book that I wanted to look at, and see if there was a method in it. That's why I joined. I think it was like it would have been the internet. It was the early days of the internet, and that's why I would have discovered mentalism definitely, because like my first mentalism things were 13 steps, Max Maven's Video Mind, that one, and I think I must have got like a Marvin's Magic set which had a mind reading your trick in it, which then made me think, oh, that I like that. That seems interesting because I don't need to practice sleight of hand, which I'm not that great at. Yeah, I think it would have been online, and then kind of just meeting people through people. And now I've got lots of magicians who are friends, but it's like, I don't care enough about magic. I love sitting and chatting. I'm lucky I've spent a lot of my life on tour with Mark Kalin and David Williamson, and I love sitting and chatting with them about magic. But I'm very much aware that, they all love to show each other tricks, and I'm not that fussed about it. But I like to hear the funny stories and that side of things. Yeah, I sort of not yeah, and I suppose like the early days of the internet, like early forums and things like that, and then just connecting, meeting people through people, I suppose, like everything, networking, isn't it, of some sort.
Were there any specific magicians that were part of that? Like I know now, or at least in the last decade, there are all of these magicians that you spent time with touring, but maybe in the first decade, were there any people that were really pivotal?
I tell you what, weirdly, would have been Darren Brown. So I got to know Darren because he lived down the road from me in Bristol.
Wild.
And through Darren, and there's a wonderful magician called Peter Clifford who's based in Bristol, which is where I'm originally from. And then through him met Andy Nyman. That was, my initial foray into realizing there's a world of magic. I suppose actually it was through Darren when he was doing his first ever shows in Bristol. It would have been that.
And what was happening there? Were you guys just hanging out? Was it, you were like, how would something like that come about?
It's quite an embarrassing story for me, but I'm going to share it with you because I think it's sort of important, because it kind of shows you why I ended up on the path I went on. So I got to know, he was doing a show at a local theatre. His first ever shows at a place called the Tobacco Factory in Bristol. I liked his TV shows. I was into mentalism already and doing magic. And I was running a website that I set up when I was a kid, which was basically designed to get me free theatre tickets to go and review things. And it ended up being very popular because it was in the early days of the internet where there wasn't much on it. So through that, Darren was doing shows. I was like, can I interview him? And they said, yeah, go and interview him. So I went to his flat and realised he lived down the road and interviewed him. And then we just sort of got on and we stayed in touch, and we'd go hang out and go see shows at the theatre together and things. And then I was putting on a new show. We never really talked much about magic, to be honest. It was about other things. And I was putting on a show to kind of just see what can I do if I start developing my own things. And I discovered his international lecture and looked at the tricks in it and worked out how to do those tricks and was like, oh, they're good. I'll go do them. Then I very quickly realized in an email from him where I learnt for the first time what the word galling meant, that this was not the thing to do. And I was probably, many people have imitated him since, and I was probably the first, and also someone he knows. And I didn't realize it was a bad thing. And obviously, I was hugely embarrassed and apologetic. And it kind of, we see each other occasionally. We were both in New York and Broadway at the same time, so we'd go for drinks and wine and coffees and stuff. But we're not really great. We know each other in acquaintances and we like each other, but it's not like we're great friends now. And I think it's because of that. And I am still hugely embarrassed by that. And it was interesting, but I realized that my path, like every other magician's path, is you find someone you like and you imitate it until you find your own thing. I, unfortunately, was imitated it to a person that I knew and didn't realize that wasn't a thing to do. And interestingly, a few years back, a lecture thing he was doing at the International Magic Convention, actually, that I went to with Andy Nyman. Darren, someone asked him about this and he said, well, when you start, you probably have to copy people. And he sort of feels like he's found his peace with it as well. And I certainly learned from it. So then from then on, what I did in my career, as Darren was becoming more and more famous and successful and everyone was doing their version of Darren, I was doing everything I could to step out of his shadow. And it's like, what would Darren do? I'm not going to do that. I'll think of something. And if there's any point in my head, I was like, oh, Darren might do that. And, throughout my career, there is stuff there which is Darren-esque, and mentalism inherently in the UK is always going to have a Darren connotation. But it just kept pushing me to think of a way of doing it differently.
That's an amazing, amazing story. And I think every magician who takes magic seriously has one of those moments where they realize that they're not doing a ton of their own material. They're doing someone else's things. And it is a really unique moment that the person whose material you were doing saw it and wrote to you to speak about it. So really, really phenomenal story.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing to have to go through. I hope no one else has to go through it. But, it taught me so much in that moment. And, particularly as I was in my late teens, early 20s, then you sort of just go, oh, okay, I see. And you're constantly learning about life anyway at that stage. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, I often think if magicians put just 1% of the care that they put into exposure into not stealing material, the world of magic would be better for it.
And you know what? I think it's about, like, not even to say not stealing material, but making material right. is the answer. Like, if we all didn't do the same damn crap, then we wouldn't have any of these problems because there wouldn't be like everybody doing the same effing trick, right? So 100%.
And it's difficult, right? Because there is a finite amount of stuff. And therefore, you're going to do similar, a mentalist act is always going to probably do a prediction of some sort and do this.
Someone's going to write something down. And
you're going to write something down. Like for my first 3 Edinburgh shows, which are an hour long each, my rule was no one writes anything down ever. And I could do 3 shows of that. And then by the 4th show, I was like, people are going to write stuff down. But like, even with virtual world these days, you kind of go, all right, well, it's all in characters. Like, if someone's seen a couple of virtual shows, chances are they've probably seen something to do with like the BM project. They've probably seen, like a hand thingy. They've probably seen this and that. So
9 card trick and...
Yeah, it's like, what can I do? If I'm going to have to do that stuff because there are limitations for what I can do, how can I do that so it is me? And if someone's seen it before, they'll feel like, oh, it might be the same trick, but it feels like a totally different thing. I think that's often the problem to solve. And that comes from working out who you are as a performer.
100%. And just as a commentary on what you said before about like it being hard, I went through a process when we were doing the newest trick in the book show where, I was like, okay, so first I was just playing with some material. And then I was like, I'm going to do brand new magic. Like, I'm just going to invent tricks. And I did that for like 8 months and they all were horrible. And I said, I cannot invent tricks. I'm going to find a trick and I'm going to make my own presentation. And then that ended up being a way that I could actually manage in some way, shape or form. And yeah, the actual magic itself evolves and changes and whatever. But, I tried my hand at making original magic. I was unable to do that. In a grand scale, little bits, yeah, of course. But I'm going to invent a new trick that I'm going to do, I was not able to do that. Instead, I found my bits and pieces and I, put my own thing to it. But you
find your way of doing it. That's the important. It's like, I don't think there's a couple of things that I probably invented in terms of like the actual style and presentation or how the trick is, because it's been based on me going, oh, this would be fun. And because I've not really, most of those things came before I was really in the magic world. So I just came up with all this independent stuff. But a large majority of my stuff is just my version of this thing. And it's just how you make that thing not feel like that thing.
So let's talk a little bit about TV. I've known about you for a really long time because just like you said, when you were a teen, looking on the internet, finding different stuff, I was looking on the internet, finding stuff, and I had YouTube. You were 10 years earlier, so you were just like discovering books and stuff. But I was discovering YouTube, and I devoured everything, every piece of magic that had ever been on any television that was on YouTube in the decade that I was around. Like I didn't see any Johnny Carson stuff, but anything that was out from the year 2000, to the year 2007 or whatever. Like I had seen all of it, and you have some really, really phenomenal television appearances that are strong magic and also, really, really strong character. So I'd love to hear about were you doing something to proactively get on TV? What was going on that gave you all of these opportunities to get there?
Very good question. That's very kind of you to say as well, because the majority of my TV stuff I'm not that proud of. I think, it's okay. Some of it I'm really not proud of, and some I'm like, all right, that's not bad. And there's a few things I'm like, oh, they're really good. But also I think that looking back on it is I look back on it who I am now as a performer and a character, and that, all of those things have been continuing on that journey. So I'm like, oh, that's a bit too daring-y, that's a bit derivative, that's a bit that. But it's interesting to see. Yeah, so I, always wanted to be on TV and perform on stage. Those things were what I wanted to do. And I did my first Edinburgh show and it went well. And I went to meet Anthony Owen, who very sadly passed away a few years ago. And he, he's instrumental in all of Darren stuff. And I had a meeting with him. I was like, my Edinburgh show went well. Here's what I do. I'd love to be on TV. And he was like, well, I've got Darren, so I probably don't need another mind reader, but stay in touch. And it was a lovely meeting. He was very nice, but he made a very valid point. He didn't realize that I would stay in touch. And the one thing I'm known for is tenacity. And I just constantly pester people about things. And eventually stuff works out, or it doesn't, but I'll keep going for it. So I would always invite him to stuff, keep in touch. And then he was, many years down the line, was casting a TV show called Killer Magic, or what eventually became Killer Magic on BBC Three. And weirdly, I don't think he'd actually thought of me for it. And Alan Hudson, who's a brilliant comedy magician of the UK, mentioned to Anthony, he was like, oh, Chris would be good for this. And then from that, I went along, did some screen tests, the channel liked me, and that show became a thing. And then before that, I'd done a couple of slots, like guest slots on different shows where they'd maybe see me in Edinburgh, or I'd pestered them and be like, I hear you have guest slots, can I be on it? And then I sort of learned about TV magic. And, I've been lucky that I did Killer Magic. I did my own kids show in the UK called Chris Cox's Mind-Boggling Magic. I don't really love doing TV magic. I think it's I do it because I hope it means I can do more live shows. I think it's a very weird and unusual process. I think the budgets don't mean you can't really do the stuff you really want to do. It's like my kids show, we'd been pitching it for about a year, and then suddenly I got a call saying, can you shoot it in 2 weeks' time? So I suddenly have 2 weeks to churn out a whole show. And everything in terms of budget and time is always limited. And you just, Killer Magic was shot over 8 weeks in Glasgow, and suddenly you do a trick and you're like, right, well, I got to write a trick for tomorrow, and you got to do this and I got to do that. And it's a hard, warm process. Weirdly, there's a trick on Killer Magic that I look back on, and I've got no memory of how I did that trick. I genuinely don't know the method, and I wish I did, because I'm like, that was a good trick. But all that stuff just comes out of the thing it teaches you, which is great, is both how to work differently. So what I do on TV is different to what I do on stage, and it's different mediums. And so how you adapt to that, how to do stuff quickly, because you're on the hamster wheel of all right, well, one night it was the location the whole trick was set around was cancelled. So I had that night to come up with a whole new thing. How to work with other people, how to compromise, how to be directed, how to think about well, if I'm going to do this, can the camera crew do this and this, and how does that make that work? And then with all of that, I was very lucky in that things I loved as a kid were magic theatre and radio. And I was also a radio producer at the BBC I was there for 10 years in total. So I've always had that part of my brain of collaborating and a producer side of my brain. And I feel that I'm a much better performer because of that producer side, and a much better producer because of a performer side. And actually, the TV world sort of combines those things, and you realize that. And, it helps for doing shows like The Illusionist. You realize that you are a cog in a very big machine. And the better you can make that machine work with everyone, the better everything's going to be for you as in your specific cog.
I think that's very helpful, especially for anybody who is thinking about television in any way. And I think the pestering is the truth. Like I think that is the reality. The reality is, you can say it a lot of different ways. You can build relationships in the industry. You can, but we're going to continually bother the people that said maybe. We say, okay, well, I'm going to keep bothering you until this either formulates into a no or a yes.
Here's a real world example. So when I was a producer at Radio 1, we produced this very big radio show, and I would every week get emails from kids, students, people who are interested in radio going, oh, I really like the show. Can I come and sit in and watch in the studio? And I always sent the same reply. I'm really busy at the minute. Can you get back to me in 2 weeks and I'll see what I can do? 95% of people never reply again. And those that reply are the people that I'd say come into the studio, because you've got to put that work in yourself. You've got to fight for those things. And otherwise it doesn't happen.
You mentioned working at the radio. Was there a transition between you taking magic seriously as a profession where you were working at the radio as well? Talk to me about what that was like.
The whole time. So I would I started at Radio 1 the year after I did my first Edinburgh show. No, it was the year of my first Edinburgh show. I have a very strong memory of coming back from Edinburgh, walking to work and getting a call saying like, oh, you want to do it next year? I'm like, I don't know if I can. Okay, maybe I'll make it work. So I combined those worlds, and I would take most of my holiday, my annual leave to go and do Edinburgh shows. And then, at one stage I was working during the day, and then I'd go off and do a tour show that evening and come back. When we were shooting Killer Magic, I was filming 4 days a week up in Glasgow, working 3 days a week at the radio station. I took little pockets of time. Like at one point I took 6 months off to go and do a tour around New Zealand and work on developing an Edinburgh show, which then became my Fatal Distraction show, which is like a narrative-based mind-reading show. Even when I did my first West End run in Impossible, I was doing 8 shows a week in the West End and 5 days a week at the radio station, and an extra day consulting with a restaurant project I was doing some magic for. So I'd literally on a Saturday be at the radio station at 6 a.m, get off air at 1 p.m, walk to the theatre, start a matinee at 3, do the evening show at 7:30, go home and do the same thing on a Sunday. And it was after that, actually, that I was like, I was feeling like I was going to lose opportunities in the magic world.
Burning the candle at 5 ends.
Yeah, I realized
I had that many ends.
All the ends. But what I thought was, I don't want to be in a position where, I had job security, I had a good wage, I had a pension, I had all those things. And I didn't want to be in a position where I was like, where I will always regret not taking those opportunities. And the truth is, I wish I'd given up the radio slightly earlier, because I feel like I'd have had more time to do what I was doing now. But I got to a position where I built enough of a safety net to go, right, I'm giving all of this up. And if I get no work for a year, I will be okay. And I can, the truth is, I left Radio 1. I was offered my first illusionist gig, which was 2 weeks over Christmas. I was like, great, I can't. That is the reason I have to leave. So I went and did that. And then I had no work for 6 months. And I got very good at learning knife skills and cooking during that time. And it was terrifying. And then all the work I was doing during that time started to roll on.
How many years were you at Radio 1?
10 years I was there in total.
Wow. It's amazing that you were able to do both. Because I'm thinking about probably most of the TV appearances that I had seen of you. You were also probably at the time juggling a full-time job and on TV for, it's just amazing,
time,
That's
and I
wild.
really miss that side. I miss having that energy. I definitely burnt myself out. Like at the end of, I think I did at one point, it was 172 days without a day off. Wow. And then I got whooping cough, which my doctor had said he'd never seen in a patient since, like no one he'd heard of it and no one's seen it. And it's
like scurvy.
Yeah, it was like, how did you get this? But all of that came from constantly like I had no fear in those days, and I think as you get older, you get more responsibility in life, you get fear. So now I'm scared of doing stuff more than I ever used to be. Like what I went and did Edinburgh because I was like, oh, I'll go do Edinburgh. Well, now I'm like, should I put on a show? I mean, what if people don't like it? What if it's not as good as the fears start to stop me? Where then your superpower when you're young is you don't give a damn, and you need to sort of exploit that before your brain tricks you and starts screwing with you.
One of the things about the producer role, and I have never had a real job, but I've certainly had the privilege to work in industries that have a certain amount of professionalism built into it, which may vary depending on where you are, but certainly it is completely different than a one-man operation from your sweatpants until you have to go to the gig. So, it's really exciting that there are some things you were able to pull. What are some of the things for you that other magicians can really benefit from production, from an actual a full-fledged production position.
Yeah, well, I should just point out that that is definitely not a proper job. Although it feels like a proper job, it's still, you're messing around. Like, I'm messing around right to thinking, oh, what can we make Hugh Jackman do when he comes on the show this week? I know, I'll write a silly song and he can read that, and then that's that. It's not a real job. It's nonsense. But it was a office. I'm working with a team. I'm managing a team. We are constantly having. You do a radio show, and the next day you go, great, that was good. What are we doing tomorrow? You're constantly churning out material. And I was very lucky to work with a guy called Matt Edmondson for my last few years there, who became one of my best friends in the world, and he is an incredibly creative person. I wouldn't have stayed if I wasn't working with him. The things you learn from it are like talent management, working with other people, and just construction of a show. Like the radio show at Radio 1, you get given your music, so you know what you're playing, and you're filling in the blanks. And it's sort of creating things going, all right, we are on a hamster wheel of having to do stuff, so we're trying to come up with ideas that are then returnable. Because I don't want to have to think of 17 new ideas every week. So go, what about, and when stuff doesn't work, you go, what about that might work if we changed it? And you're constantly refining that process. And you're just doing stuff because you've got no other chance. You always have a deadline. And if I don't have a deadline, I don't do stuff. So therefore, your deadlines, you're on air every day. And actually giving yourself deadlines is really useful. The other thing that I think that I've really learned from it is how I like the thing I see a lot when I work with other magicians who all they've ever done is magic, is sometimes they're very difficult to work with. And they're not aware of how difficult they are to work with. And that only comes, I think I'm not, hopefully I'm not difficult to work with, because I'm a team player, and I realize the importance of being in a team and be it managing team or part of a team. And actually, everyone makes you the best version of you can be. And the more you can work with other people and talk to them, the better you can be. And you realize that, inherently magic is quite a solitary art form. A lot of it, where for me, it never has been, because I'm not someone who'd sit at home and practice card sleights. I'm someone who'd just go and start performing stuff, because that's all I ever felt like I wanted to do as a kid. So actually that ability to work with other people, both it makes you better as a person when you're actually interacting with people and personable skills, but also if you're looking at trying to get on those big kind of multi-man magic shows that I've been lucky enough to do, or TV shows, you're all just part of a team. And if you're an easy person to work with, then that goes a long way. You can be the greatest act in the world, but if you're a nightmare to work with, chances are they might not book you again. And chances are you might not realize you're being a nightmare as well.
Right. It's amazing that part of the whole, it's about, it's big, small, big, you got to have the big picture, then you can zoom into like your role or whatever. And you got to go back to that big picture,
that kind
right?
of
like
30,000 feet view, and that sort of Pixar thing where they focus on the detail and then they do the brain trust of 30,000 feet and they focus on the detail and the brain trust. I think the more you can collaborate with other people and get advice and opinions from people you trust, the better you're going to be. Like the joy of doing a show like The Illusionists is every night you come off stage and you've got 5 of the world's best magicians to get notes from and to try new things and fix stuff. And, I've never been more proud than when like David Williamson's done a joke that I came up with and it's hit, and he's done it every night. And equally, I've never been more proud that he's given me things, or Mark Kalin or Jonathan Goodwin or any of those people. You get better by being around better people.
It's a 100% true. And I think anybody should jump at the opportunity to work together with other people. And I'll certainly say the material that I've been able to produce as a single versus working with a team of people with their own skills, every single time the team wins, every single time, obviously.
And also paying for that, knowing that you're investing in yourself. It's, the trick I am sort of my most unique thing that I do, and the thing I've been doing in all the kind of the Illusionists and the big stage shows I've done, is based on a thing I did in an Edinburgh show in 2011. That's where it started life. And I was like, I'd like to do that. When I was given the first West End show called Impossible, I was like, I'd like to do this trick because no one is doing anything like it. And it's big, it fills the stage, and it's colourful. And it's a trick where basically someone comes up, we have 2 dressing rooms, they get dressed up, I end up wearing the same thing. That in essence is the trick. And it came out of an idea that I genuinely went to an Apple store wearing the exact same colour t-shirt as the people in the Apple store, got so many questions, left because people thought I was an employee. I was like, if it was a real mind reader, that wouldn't happen. And that started the idea of going, I liked the visual image of you seeing someone get dressed and then someone else get dressed and they match the same. So that's how it was first done. And then before the West End, I paid Andy Nyman for a couple of days consultancy. And it was the best money I ever spent, because he instantly pointed out 3 flaws with the trick, which then we solved. And now that trick is just, it gets better and better every time I do it. But the inherent issues with that trick suddenly were fixed, and therefore the trick became much better. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't paid him for his time.
it is worth it to pay for the best and to pay for help and to pay for, I have hired magic consultants, sales consultants, employees, coaches, like all of those things, paid money for those things. And I'm grateful for it, right? Like not every single teacher is the best teacher you've ever had and not every, understood, but definitely thinking that we can all just do it ourselves and that we should spend 10 years grudging through something that somebody else can help us with, whose job it is to be so good at this darn thing, may be a mistake.
And it's easy. You won't think twice about spending $2,000 on a Buzzy Buzz prop or 20 grand on an illusion, but you might go, oh, am I going to spend $1,000 on someone for a day? Is that like the stuff you get out? It's like Nova stuff you're not that great at, and you need not even that you need help at, but someone can just help make you better. And it's, I know that I'm not very good at the business side of things, and I then did like got you on board, and it's like, can you help me with this and with your scheme, and find people who are great at stuff and get them to help you. It's so I see it in the world of theatre all the time. That's all people are always doing that, and in the world of magic I don't think it's as popular a thing, and I think people will be better for it.
They are certainly better at it in the world of theater than they are in the world of magic. That is for sure true. Speaking of that, one thing that we've returned to a few times in this conversation is obviously, magicians are wonderful people, and you like, magicians and spending time talking about your shows and stuff, but you're not a magic club guy. You don't spend a lot of time around magicians. And I think, I don't want to say that like if you spend a lot of time in magic clubs, you're not going to be like a professional magician. It's not true at all. I don't think that at all. But there is something to be said about those that are really, really ridiculously busy doing shows and doing stuff are not usually those that are spending so much time working on a certain sleight, with a group of people. Not always, but a lot of the time. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts about kind of how and where you've spent your time and how that's affected your trajectory.
That's an astute point, because you're right. Because like Williamson is a great example of someone at the top of the game, the best in the biz, and loves Magic Club and loves magic more than anything else, and will be there doing those slides, but knows where his magic side is and where his performer side is, and knows where the crossover is and where actually he's just doing that because that's his hobby. And it all depends on what your goals are. A lot of people will love magic and they have no desire to be on TV or to do these big shows, and that's great, and that's an amazing thing. I feel my world is more the world of theatre and entertainment. I love theatre more than I love magic, and the reason I do what I do is because I get to then be on theatre without any actual skills to be on theatre stages. But that world is inspired and informed my thinking more than anything else, and I feel like watching a great play, like there was a point where before I spent my life on tour, like we'd see I was lucky, I live in London, so I'd see 2 or 3 shows a week. And you learn what you love, what you don't like, why you go, okay, yeah, I can see why these people like Wicked, but I can see why Wicked is sort of a 3-star musical with 2 good songs, because I've seen all this other stuff that shows you this is better. And, those things, you look at someone like, I'm obsessed with an actor called Mark Rylance, who won an Oscar for Bridge of Spies, but he's a theatre actor. And there's a play called Jerusalem, and I saw it way too many times, and I took Penn and Teller to see it, I took Tim Minchin to see it, I took anyone I knew who I loved as a person and wanted, like, was a creative, to go look at this and look at what he's doing, because this is the real magic trick here, and just investigating why is it that it connects with me. That stuff just informs your thinking and your gut in everything else you do, and therefore you can sort of start to trust your gut more, because it's based on just consuming all of this other stuff, which isn't just consuming someone doing a 6-card repeat or finding a new sleight or doing an ambitious card routine. And therefore it kind of informs everything I do. So my starting point on a trick is always like, what's the big idea? It's like 2 people end up wearing the same clothes. All right, great. Then what do I do with that, which makes it a piece and has like a producer side of me goes, all right, well, how do I build problem with mentalism is it's all a reveal at the end. So how do I build reveals along the way so people feel they're going on a journey? Those things all combine that. And I'll be like, okay, in this play, why is it 3 acts? Okay, it's 3 acts and it should only be 2. So why do I dislike it being 3 acts? Because there's a boring bit in the middle. And now I'll look at this and go, actually, it feels like there's a little lull in the middle there. So I can pull that bit out or put something out. All of that just sort of feeds into your thinking without you having to think about it.
Right. It's theatrical thinking because, it's a theatrical background. at least one thing that anybody can take from this is that your growth in magic will probably come from what you bring to the table, from all of the things that you do not inside of magic. Like
exactly that.
That's just most likely. Again, not always true. Someone may invent another place to put your finger for a shuffle that we never thought of, and it's because of all the time they spend inside of magic. But my hunch is that the thing that you create and do that is unique or original or special or fun or whatever will probably come from all of the experiences and passions and joys that you have outside of the world of magic.
Yeah, all the stuff I think that leads to the performance side of magic rather than the mythological side of magic. Yeah. That the truth is that's the gold, is the performance stuff. The trick is, it has to be good enough to support that. Yeah. But if you can find a way of presenting it and performing it, which is 100% you, then that's going to ignite what you want to do.
And I'm gesturing towards Tarbell's, and I would be gesturing towards the library 90 degrees further. Like, we got books filled with different ways to do the stuff. Right. Yeah. So coming up with the creative ways to present it is definitely what it's all about. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity to talk about the next topic. And I don't usually do what I'm about to do on the podcast, which is I don't usually talk very, very specifically about a trick or a performance of one of the people that I'm interviewing. Don't get nervous. You look nervous. No. But there's one thing that you do or used to do, and I say used to because I think a lot of the TV footage that I've seen is from a little while back. But there's thing that you do or used to do that was a really big turning point in theory for me in my magic. And I saw you doing it, and I was, he sees this as well. And it also showed up, by the way, in the Jerks. And it showed up in a lot of different places. And what it is it's this concept of, and it's kind of like an equation, which is, okay, here's this claim. I'm going to read your mind, and here's how I'm going to do it. This absolutely non-believable, ridiculous thing that we're going to do together. And then I'm going to prove that it actually worked. Right. And there's something about that that's really quite wonderful, because so much of other magic is claiming, hey, I am going to do this thing for real. And the audience says, no way, I don't believe that at all. And it's way more fun.
And then you go, ta-da, I was right. You're all idiots.
Right. Yeah. And it's way more fun to have the audience say to themselves, well, I know that him like sucking on that pacifier isn't going to make him smarter, but man, it looks like it feels like he does. And there's a lot of magicians that have done it. Pitt Hartling famously does it with orange juice. He drinks orange juice and he has a super powered memory. And there's all of these different versions of it. And the one that I'm referring to, and again, I don't know if you still do it. I don't know if you do, varied versions of it, but you like lick people's earlobes and drink their water. You did it on one of the Got Talent shows as well. So I'd love to kind of hear about that style. You don't take it too seriously. You call yourself, the mind reader who doesn't read minds. I think that they know that it's not real, and that's part of the whole thing. So I'd love to hear you talk about this way that you present this that doesn't take magic too seriously.
So this is a very interesting journey to get to where I got to with it. It started my first Edinburgh show. The first thing was the show was Chris Cox. He can't read minds. I'm a mind reader who can't read minds. And the idea is that I like the idea that I'm going at the offset going, I can't actually read your mind, but here's all the things that I'm going to do to make it look like I can read your mind. And therefore, in those early days, it was definitely more a faux psychology approach.
A battle of wits.
You're standing like this. Yeah, you're standing like this. That means this. Or it's like, oh, these are the things. And it was always fun and funny, but I was trying to take it a bit too seriously. And I don't know when it came, but I got to a point where I was like, I just don't care. I don't want people to think that I'm doing it for real. I don't care whether they think I can do it for real or not. That doesn't interest me. What interests me is, are they being entertained? And as soon as that thought came into my head, I don't know whether that came from, watching something and going, I'm bored, or, I find mentalism very boring to watch as a rule, because there's so much process. And it's like, I was like, how do I make that process fun? And as soon as you don't care how people think it's done, you suddenly open, or at least I open myself up to this world of possibility. And I realized that I also remember kind of doing shows in New Zealand where I was very much hammering home the fact that this is all nonsense. And I would have people coming up to me after the show going like, oh, yeah, I know you say it's nonsense, but you can probably do it for real, right? And I was like, oh yeah. And that kind of sparked this idea of like, well, if you could really do this stuff, you wouldn't be telling people you could do it and all that things. But Actually, Jonathan Goodwin, who I've worked with a lot on The Illusionist, who's an incredible daredevil escape artist and magician. He was very instrumental in helping me with develop this thought process. And it all came eventually down to the fact that I realized if I'm saying I'm a mind reader who can't read minds on stage as my opening bit in a show like The Illusionist or Impossible, it's slightly confusing to people. And I'd up to that point been doing things like in an Edinburgh show in like 2011, I'd done a thing where people were like, I'm very good at touch typing. So I get people just to imagine they were touch typing and hold their hands and try and work out what letter they might be thinking of from that kind of approach. Was that, that's interesting. And this idea of not taking it seriously and not having to say, I want to say I'm a mind reader, get a laugh out of that because of how I look and it being very different and sort of cartoonesque. And then it to be silly and entertaining. And I just came up with a simple approach was mind reading works for me. If I touch you or you touch me, we make a connection, we get into sync and I can read your mind. So it's time to touch me. Cue music sting. And that was it. And then everything was about building funny ways to make those connections. And I've tried all different things and, everything inherently links to that. And it's the audience are buying into the conceit, the MacGuffin of I touch you, I read your minds. They go, well, obviously that can't be it. Maybe it is, but it's obviously not. And it must be this and it must be that. Or they'll go, I know what you're doing. It's, yeah, you're doing psychology. Or, oh, you're influencing us. Or, it's that. And they'll come up with all this nonsense. And I'm just open and going, can't do it. How do I do it? Years of training at Hogwarts. That's how. Like, I just buy into the play and the fun, and the play is so important with me. So therefore, it's like wobbling their earlobe. Like that was always quite an early on an idea. As to like, I thought it'd be funny to touch their earlobe because it looks funny. And then from that, in doing it on stage, I said the line. Now, for us, I need to get a connection slightly stronger. Is it okay if I touch your earlobe? They would say yes, and I realized an ad lib on stage. So the first night, it's been ever since. So I need to touch your tongue. Is it okay? I need to touch your need to make a connection. Is it okay if I touch your earlobe? Yes, with my tongue. Lean into them and stick my tongue out. Big laugh. Sometimes they say yes. I lick their earlobe with my tongue. Not that gross, really. Their earlobe's probably quite clean. Gets huge laughs. If not, I've got other things that I do. But it just builds funny and silly into it all. And I mean, I've got to restructure everything now post-COVID. But yeah. All of that stuff came out of, what's a fun and silly way to do it? And therefore, all the process is based on an entertaining thing rather than process for the sake of process.
And you know what? I think, first of all, I want to commend you on it because I think that style, I believe, is going to become more and more and more popular over the next decade.
I hope not, because at the minute it's the only thing keeping me different from everyone else. Also, by the way, I should just point out that thing I said earlier about being as different as from Darren as possible, that is intrinsically linked to all of these thoughts, because there is no way Darren's going to go around with a massive pole with a picture of his face on it, making people kiss him, or licking people's ear, all of that stuff. It's just like, okay, he's never going to do that, so then it feels totally me.
Right. I think obviously I'm not saying everyone go be Chris Cox, but I think that in the last couple years, magicians have struggled a lot with claiming to be able to do magical things. And I think that one of the reasons why the Jerks has succeeded is because he does a really good job of addressing how magicians address, especially to their peers, this weird thing that is magic. Like, I don't want you to believe that I think that this is real. I don't want you to think that I want you to think that this is real. So there's this weird thing going on. And I think that he's built out some of the infrastructure to do that. And I think that what you've done as well is, I think it's one of the first times I've seen it, especially in a theatrical sense, that it's happening. So I wanted to commend you on it. And I also wanted to share that I think that this concept of, I know that you don't believe it, so let's both have as much fun as we can with the in-between, is going to, it took me personally 3 to 4 years of performing to realize that was my way. Everything I do is like that. I ask people to hold their breath to make their memory stronger, because when people drown, they remember things that they never remember before. We ask people to like get other people to do things, massage each other to get, like all of that stuff, because we know how much more fun that is than claiming that we can do anything. And I think that it's really a phenomenal approach.
We're complicit, aren't we? The audience and the performer, we're complicit in the same thing. And it's, I think that all comes from my love of theatre. It's like, when you're going to watch a play or a musical, you're watching a play or a musical or even a movie or something, you're entering that world of artifice, and it's no different with magic. So therefore, why have you got to make them think it's real magic or this? You don't have to do that. You can make any old nonsense because we're in it together. And as long as you do it with enough charm and the audience buy into that, then you're all on that journey together. You're just saying, hey, come get in my car. It's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah. And And on that note, really what I want to do when I'm doing magic is I want my audience to play with me. Play this
Yeah,
dumb game
that's
with
it.
me, right? Oh, you've got an invisible deck. Shuffle them. Oh, they're not in the box. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, ha, ha, ha. They're not in the box. Like I want them to play along with this stupid imaginary world that we're doing together. And I think the only way to do that is to make it fun.
This is such an important thing. So, for some people, this is not the case. My character is versions of me, and it's fun, silly, entertaining. I can't be taken seriously as a person. So therefore, I highlight all those things which people like about me, and that energy and that charm and that I'm at my best off script, being quick and witty, and then putting that stuff into every night show. I'm lucky that that's how my brain works. And it's the thing. One of the things I love about doing virtual is I can come up with new jokes every day based on what I'm looking at and how I'm talking to people. And that bit of my brain I've really missed using pre-performing virtual. But this idea of play and fun is so important to me. And Mark Rylance, who I talked about earlier, this amazing actor, talks about a play being a play. The idea of a theatrical play and the joy of play.
Playing,
and actually those things, they come together, and it's sort of, you go, oh yeah, of course, that is what those experiences of people going to the theatre or wanting to see a magic show. They're there for fun and entertainment, and they want to play and to ignite that inner child. That's the point of magic to some extent. We often trial out that whole thing, oh yeah, magic makes you feel like a kid again. Actually, playing makes you feel like a kid again. And when you bring all those things together, you can stop people building the jigsaw in their head of trying to work stuff out. You can stop the standoffish approach of I'm going to figure you out, magician, and you just get everyone into a joyous spirit. And I think that's sort of that's a thing that magic can genuinely do and do real magic with, because you can have this joy and this play along the way, and then have this great moment at the end. Everyone's like, oh my god, this guy, well, wow, what happened there? And it all builds onto itself, and it just creates a great feeling.
And first of all, I love what you just shared there, because I think it's totally true. And I love that concept of play, and that people go to see theater, to play, to be a part of it. One thing that I'll comment on about people wanting to engage in what's going on is exactly what you shared about, like, people not wanting to figure out how the whole thing works and want to play with you. And I think a lot of the fears that new magicians have is, oh, the people are going to try to bust me and whatever. And I think it's because that's how we come to it. And part of that is, I think, really, and I know I was talking about this a minute ago, but just to highlight again, I think generationally or timeline wise, when we think of, like, originally magic was, not originally, but at one point magic was electromagnetism that the scientists knew, but the people didn't. And it was, wow, look how smart I am, look what I can do. And you don't know how to do. And it's, it's amazing. And I think it's really evolved now, where, like, we don't want that. We don't want, we need something that doesn't insult our intelligence. And I think part of that is not taking the plot too seriously, so that people don't feel insulted if they don't, and they're like, hey, I don't believe that. Hey, this is nonsense. This guy's crap, Yeah,
I think you're right. It's sort of, there's a timeline shift of people coming to see magic and be like, oh, I'm going to work it out. I'm just going to show how great I am. And there is, an ego thing within that for audience members, where my whole thing is that I play low status. I'm below them. I want, if something goes is sort of like if I'm off, like an off by one, I want them to be going, oh, you were so close. You did really well. Well done you, rather than them going, haha, look at the idiot.
Right.
Like, I want them buying into me and caring about me as a human. And I've been in a lucky position that I've never done close up or things like that. And that's purely because I'm a stage performer. I'm a cabaret performer. I perform in front of audiences. It's where I'm my most comfortable, where I feel at home. I love that. It's me at 100% me. And therefore, it's like, if I get offered gigs for close-up work, I don't do them. I say no, because it's not my skill set. Right. And I always find it slightly frustrating when I see close-up magicians doing stage performances. Like, oh, well, you're just doing your close-up act on stage. They're two very different worlds.
Yeah.
But I think that whole idea of worrying that people can bust me, that is a genuine concern in those worlds where that you are standing next to those people, and your act has to be bulletproof, because they can say to your face, I saw where you loaded that card.
Right.
On stage, they're not going to shout that out, and if they are, I've got a microphone. I'm louder than them.
Right.
So therefore, I understand that thought process. But also, if you are likable enough, then they're not going to want to bust you. And if they do try and bust you, the rest of the group will be like, "Why are you kicking a puppy? Why are you That,
Right.
if someone's trying to be an idiot to me, they will, like, occasionally I get people on stage who are just being a bit of an arse. And I've had hundreds of thousands of people, not probably not that many, definitely thousands of people on stage with me. And I remember there's a handful I remember who are amazing, and the rest I forget about, and a handful I remember who are idiots. And I always win the day,
Right.
because I'm lucky in that I've got all lines prepared for it and I'm witty and good. But
Hmm.
also I just let them show themselves to be an idiot, and the audience quickly turn on them because they
Hmm.
like me. And that thing of like likability of a magician is such an important part, because like the old Seinfeld gag and stuff, the inevitable thing you're doing is going, look what I can do that you can't, suckers.
Right.
How do you turn that around to make them? That's not a nice thing to see. You want to be like, look what, even just reframing again, look what I'm sharing with you,
Yeah.
is sort of a different way to approach the same thing.
Just to highlight somebody who did a lot of great work in talking about this area, Carissa Hendricks has a lecture about meta modernity, where she talks about kind of the different phases that magic has gone through with, David Copperfield and Doug Henning, what things look like then, and then with David Blaine and Chris Angel and what things look like then, and what things look like now, and how we're kind of in this era where our magic is a commentary about magic, and we're playing up the silliness of magic right now in what we do, instead of saying I can talk to the dead, or whatever. It's less popular now. Love chatting about this stuff, because I know I don't usually talk about this great detail about the tricks themselves. One thing I want to talk about is a few times you've said, like, I don't love magic. You said, like, you like magic. It's like part of what you do, but it's
yeah,
not.
I do like magic.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Like, it's interesting because it feels like as time goes on, even as myself, as time goes on, like, once I felt like I needed to learn everything as a magician. And now the rate in which I learn new magic is slow, unless I'm like challenging myself to a Tarbell challenge to come up with new tricks every month or whatever. So it is interesting to wonder, when you say you don't love magic, or rather, like, you're not obsessed with magic right now. Talk to me about kind of what that means and what that's meant through your career.
I was going to say, I think it's that I don't care about magic, but that's actually wrong. I do care a lot about magic. I want my magic to be super strong and bulletproof, and people not to know how it's done, and to give that sense of wonder and amazement that it should do. And because the reactions you get are based on that surprise and that wow moment. So magic, I do care inherently so much about it, but I don't really like it. Like, if I see a magic show, like, there are certain, like, Darren, his shows are just above and beyond anything else in the world, because they are pieces of theatre. And I find it, I struggle, I try to avoid seeing Darren stuff, because there's always a worry that stuff gets in your brain somehow and then it leaks out, and I don't want that myself. But a lot of magic that I see, I get very bored by, and I'm frustrated by, and equally, a lot of magic I see and it's joyous and it's wonderful and it's amazing, because someone's just gone beyond the first thought. I think often that's the case. I'm like, you had your first thought and you've gone, I'll do that. Well, actually, if you just take that journey on a little bit more and you're a little less lazy, and I'm totally to blame for that. I know that my cruise set has some first thought ideas like, oh, that'll be fine. And I haven't done that cruise set for many years, luckily. And if I go back to it, I will actually spend more time developing it. But actually, at the time when I was trying to develop it, I was like, okay, that'll be fine. It'll be good. But I think if people are trusting you with their time and their energy, you have to put the effort in. And I just I find it maybe sometimes emotionally dark, like, just there's no emotion or no connection, or it's just like there's like occasionally, like, I love watching Williamson every night in The Illusionist, and Rocky Raccoon isn't a magic trick really, but it's just playing with audiences. Like, there's an amazing magician called Tyler Wilson, who I spent a lot of time with when I was doing The Illusionist in Reno, who's amazing, a brilliant human. And I keep talking to him about every now and again, and when we message each other, there's a trick he showed me one day in a coffee shop, and it was just such a great presentation for a basic trick. I'm like, of course. And I'm like, why haven't you marketed that? What are you doing with it? And it was just that thing again, like, you just took the thought a little step further than it just being like, oh, it's just going to be a book test, which in essence is what it was. And those things, yeah, I think it's, there is a lot of magic I love. I think I'm often quite down on magic, but I think the problem, I used to say this when I was promoting my Edinburgh shows, it's like, the problem with magic, when I did my first Edinburgh show, I think I was one of a handful of magicians there. And by the time my final year there maybe 40 different magicians doing stuff. And inevitably, if you go see those shows, you're going to see a lot of the same material or a lot of the same gags or something. And I feel like if you see a bad comedian, this is what I'd say, and I don't know whether I believe it. I think I do, actually. If you see a bad comedian, you don't say you don't like comedy. But if you see a bad magician, people will go, I don't like magic, and not see another magic show. So we owe it to ourselves and each other to be the best we can be. And those journeys take time. And, I'm as good as I am now because I've been doing it for long enough to keep doing those stage things. And equally, I don't think I'm that good. I think I need to work harder on it. But I've sort of gone off topic and had a rambly thought. But I think I sort of have a love-hate with magic. And I think I wish magic were better in general. But if it were better, but you kind of forget that people get into magic because they love it and it's a hobby and it's a different thing than it is to me. And yeah, those things I think I don't know what I think, but there's some nonsense there that someone might be able to. If anyone thinks what I think, please email me and let me know what you think I think. I'd love to know.
No, but I will say that part of what you're saying is true, that, a lot of the magic that I see, particularly when you touched on emotions, that, a lot of it is really, 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 really emotionless. It is just the actual magic itself or the tricks with someone else's presentation and someone else's person.
Yeah, that's it. I don't see the person. I want to see the version of your person that feels real. That's it. And that emotionless. And I really hate magic, which is forced emotion. Like, how can I make this trick? How can I make this mind reading trick better? I know, I'll make them think about the first person they kissed and reveal that, because then it'll have, like, I don't give a damn as an audience member. It doesn't make it more emotional, really. And that's partly because I think that sort of stuff is hacky, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't want it. I just want to have fun. And that's very much my opinion. I totally have been proven wrong, because I've seen people do great stuff with that. But yeah, that thing of like, be yourself and show that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think anybody that can use this as a little reminder to let a little bit of that personality shine, a little bit of that playing, having fun shine. It's definitely going to make all the difference.
And also just maybe having those thoughts, like thinking like I've just thought. It's like, I don't know what that thought is and I haven't got an answer for it yet. But actually, I will now continue to think on that and work out what it is. Because often I've created tricks based on things like I've seen stuff and like, I don't like that. What is it I don't like about it? Great. What's the opposite of that? Great. I'll do that then.
One of the last things that I wanted to ask you is about touring. Virtual magic, I see, has been a ton of fun. You were on tour. You are planning another tour, or at least a run that people can come see. Finally, come buy in-person tickets to. And I think there was a moment where you were describing your touring with the Illusionist, and you were like, well, it was, one day here, the next city we were here, then I was home for 2 days with my family before I could fly back out. On one hand, it's the dream of being a magician. On the other hand, like, it's quite a lot to handle. And I think virtual has given a lot of magicians a peek at, another lifestyle. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about kind of what touring was like, maybe the worst parts and also the best parts, and maybe what your feelings are about it all coming back soon, maybe.
I mean, I love it. I miss it terribly. I feel like a part of my soul is not alive because I can't get on stage and tour and do those things. That said, when it stopped and I thought I was going to have a few months off, I was like, oh, thank God, because it's relentless. And I am at my happiest on stage. And I know I would not have got to play, this is coming up. This summer will be my 4th time doing a West End run at Broadway, Sydney Opera House. I wouldn't got to play these places without being in a big touring magic show. No one's going to book me to do that on my own, however much I wish they would. And I love it. And it's exhausting. And it's, particularly at different stages in your life as well. I have got 2 young kids, and the last year has been great because I finish a show and I'm 2 seconds away, I'm seeing them, rather than, like on tour. I remember a show in Salt Lake City. I worked the timings out. We finished the show. We had someone help me get changed. Our dresser helped me get changed into my regular clothes in the wings as the curtain was coming down, so I could jump in a cab and get to make a flight that left an hour and 10 minutes after the show ended, so I could fly home and spend 3 days at home and then fly back. I'd fly 8 hours to LA, landed, took 2 hours in the car, got to a venue, did the show that night. I mean, that stuff is exhausting, but it's a world I loved because you build your family on tour. And I love being in a theater, and I love chatting to stage management and seeing all those things backstage and hanging out with those people and seeing parts of the world you're never going to see otherwise. And it's a completely different, it's a fake world, and it doesn't really exist because you're in a hotel, you're on a bus, you're eating chicken wings after a show, you're doing this, you're doing that. And the thing I really appreciate having had this time off is I look back at it and go, wow, what an opportunity. And I will give anything, and not that I took it for granted then, but I cannot wait to get back to doing it. But it's exhausting. But what a great reason to be exhausted. I'm exhausted because I got up, someone gave me breakfast, I got on a bus for a couple of hours, I got to a hotel, I checked in, I got some cookies given to me in my room, I got to the theatre, I did some catering, I entertained 2,000 people, and I did the same thing the next day. I mean, that's awesome, right?
It's the dream. It's totally living the dream.
And also that thing of like you're better every night because of the people you're working with and those conversations you're having. And sometimes touring is a nightmare, and it's always personality dependent. A lot of that, it's based on your personality of like how you're getting on with other people. And there's one person can be slightly toxic, and it can ruin the whole thing for everyone.
Yeah.
I am someone who gets on and spend a lot of my time with the crew as much as the other performers, and because I love that kind of theatre thing and chatting to those people and just being a nice person and getting to know people, and that joy of playing a different city. And I watch TV and someone mentions a place that in the middle of America, I'm like, oh, I played there. It's tough when you have as you start to get more, and annoyingly, it kind of coincides with career trajectory. In theory, the more you do it, the better you get, and the more gigs you should be getting if you work that world correctly. But also, as you're getting to that stage, you're also sorting out your personal life and your family and those things. So it's it becomes a very difficult thing. And I was used to spending a couple of weeks at home, going away, them coming out for a couple of weeks, going away, and being like, we sort of worked out that I can be apart for about 6 weeks and be fine because I can compartmentalize it. I now worry going back into it, like after all this time at home, it's going to be really difficult to go away and do that. But what a privileged position I'm in, that the reason I have to go away is to earn money for our family so we can, kids can have food, but also that I get to go and do what I've loved and what the only thing I've ever wanted to do since I was little. Amazing. And I'm so grateful to do that. And I hope I get to do it again soon.
I love the way that you framed it. Like it is absolutely grueling and painful, and there's no other grueling, painful thing that I would rather be doing. And I think that, one thing that I've been thinking about over the course of the last year is what things in our life we are fulfilled by, like what things in our life we are most proud of. And it tends to be those things that are hard. Like they have to be hard, we kind of have to work through them. We're not really proud of the easy things that just happen to happen. We're proud of the things that we pushed for and worked for and that were hard. Sometimes the more grueling, some periods of it was, the more proud we are of ourselves. So it really is one of those things where like, yes, as busy as you could be, as like, no time as you possibly could have. And that all being said, like a ton of fun. Like an absolute
and also like we say, it's it's not a proper job. I'm complaining about being treated very nicely and flying nicely and having a nice seat and going, I got 3 hours to read a book here. Like I can't remember I've been home for a year, I can't remember the last time I had 3 hours to pick up a book to have a look at it, those things. But it's because your whole day is based around you being in your best possible position for that show that night, because you want to give the best you every time. And that's a weird thing with virtuals. I found that I have to kind of adopt a similar mentality before doing a virtual show. Is like early on I would be like, okay, great, I can just turn the computer on and do the show. And actually what I realize I do in the stage show is for half an hour when the house opens, I sit in the wings, I have a chat with everyone, I have a bit of a laugh, I'm just relaxed and getting my mind ready. And I realize similarly for virtual, I need to get out of the house, go into my little office here, turn everything off for a bit and just sit and have a little sit just to get myself in that position. And I think that's I think those things you learn about yourself and what makes you your best version of your performer, I think are important in every style of performance you do.
100%. What you just said about virtual is interesting because for me, on one sense, when I was doing a live show, it would be like 4 hours of needing to like get into the zone before the show. And I'm like, oh, wow, now I don't have that because I'm not driving to the gig and I'm not that. But I think what you just said is really important. Where like the 30 minutes before the show, I need to be doing nothing. There's no way that I can be doing anything in the 30 minutes before a show. Like, and that's part of it for me, is just like I lose a little bit of like, it's kind of working from home. You have to be able to do like task switching, go from like writing an email to like, performance mode. And so it's tough to be able to manage all of those at once. Let's talk just before we wrap up, let's talk about virtual magic. I had the pleasure of working with you inside of Upgrade Academy, and I know you've been doing amazing things as per usual. Would love to hear kind of what's your love, hate, pros, cons kind of about virtual magic. There's obviously a lot to love, but it's not the same as touring and getting a cookie in your hotel room. I mean, you can have a cookie, but you're probably going to have to buy it yourself.
Yeah, I'm provided my own cookies these days.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when obviously the pandemic started and quite quickly some people pivoted to virtual, I was like, I'm not going to do that. There's nothing worse I could think of at the minute than doing that. And that's partly because I was burnt out from, sort of 2 solid years of touring. So actually being home and being with my family was
sounded way more fun than doing a virtual show.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, we'll be back on tour by at least the end of summer, the very latest Christmas time. And as we move further in the year, and in the UK, a lot of people got money from the government. I was one of about 3 million people that fell through every possible opportunity to be given any money. So it was like, I've got no money coming in. And if I hadn't been clever in saving the last few years, we'd have been screwed. And my wife was on maternity leave, so she was bringing nothing in. And we wwere like, okay, I got to the point, it's like, I need to start working out what I'm going to do. And I spent a lot of time thinking about a virtual show and learning the tech. And, the tech side of it, I love it. It's the radio producer side of my brain ignites again, because in a radio station, you're doing the show while you're making the show. You're stage managing your own show. So I've enjoyed that side of it and developing the show. And what I realized is, there's a reason, I see the huge success people have. And as part of the Upgrade Academy, it's a huge thing, is this idea of doing a public show. And I spoke to you a bit about this. It's like, I don't want to do a public show because I don't feel the show that I do is good enough. And actually, I was having a conversation with Luis de Matos recently, and he's like, he has a similar problem. Like, our problem is we think stuff's not good enough. And actually, people would just really like it how it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And actually, I see that every day when I do these shows. People genuinely love them. And it's the differences.
Yes, that's why I'm yelling about this. Yeah. That's why I yell like, yes.
Yes, and I feel like I have a reputation to maintain and all of this stuff. And like, the reason I didn't do virtual shows to start with is like, well, if the guy's done, Broadway, West End, Sydney Opera House, TV, all this, like, the show needs to match those production standards. So I put a lot of time and effort into making it feel like it was a proper show, in terms of scripting it and material. But also there's a lot of material where I took stuff from my stage world and my corporate sets and like, great, that works. I can make that work for Zoom. And then stuff I was like, okay, well, that's a good Zoom trick that's on sale. I'll take that and find my way of doing it. So I think if you see my show, you'll see, and you've seen other shows, you'll see maybe 50% is me, 50% is my version of things. But I've really enjoyed it because it's exercised the parts of the brain I've missed enjoying. And those mainly are the things I've realized that make a virtual show, at least for me, good, is that making it fun, playing with the audience.
Yes.
The greatest stuff is when I'm just chatting to them and being funny and finding little jokes and then linking those jokes back in throughout the show and those moments and creating little characters for people. And I've sort of dropped a lot of material that I'd written, and I've dropped certain tricks, and I've just kept stuff where it allows that to be a conversation rather than I'm performing at you. And even, I've done shows with like thousands of people, or not thousands, 1,000, probably less than that actually logged into the call. But it was virtually the same thing. And it's just having a conversation and people feeling together and experiencing fun and laughter and having a bit of a laugh and all those things, and not taking it seriously and finding stupid ways to do stuff, and reflecting what it is that people are, that awareness. In my head, I go, you're watching a Zoom show, it's a Zoom show. I'm not going to try and make it look like a TV show, because if you want to watch TV, go and watch actual TV, because you're literally a screen away from it.
Totally.
And it's better.
Totally.
But it's going to look better than your normal Zoom call that you're seeing every day, where these people, they can see you've put some effort in, they're comfortable, they get you, they have fun.
100 million %. It's like, I think about, I make fun of like, I don't know if you've ever seen that show on like Disney or Family Channel called Recess. And it's these kids, and there's cartoon, this girl, right? Yeah. And there's this girl, and she'd always say, and I may be messing this up with a different show, but you'll get the idea. This girl used to say, like, at my old school, at my old school, And there came a point where someone was just like, enough. You're not gonna, there's no old school. And that's what I think about with virtual. A lot of magicians, they're like, I used to be able to bring people on stage. And I'm like, yes. Yeah. And so did I. And so did many other people. And right now there's thousands starving for fun and play and interactivity. And you're robbing them up, not you specifically, but you're robbing them of it by not by saying, I could hypothetically, if there were no restrictions, do a live show this good. But I'm not. And I think everybody should have fun. Obviously, make sure you're putting out something good that you like, but do it and like one thing that Adrian Lacroix said in the episode with him that I think was really, really insightful is he said, the worst thing you could do with your home studio is pretend that you're in a giant theater. He said, people know where you are. They're also in their damn house. They also have kids and pets and they also, so like,
they appreciate that stuff. It shows your humanity.
Yes.
It connects you with them.
Yes, 100%.
It's so true.
So I think
it's like my setup is like is just I'm in my office / the spare room. My setup is all bits of set and bits of like merch and stuff that I normally have in a cupboard, and I've just got to put it here because I'm aware that when people book me, I want them to feel like they're getting, oh my god, we got. And the truth is, I was in a lucky position that I couldn't do any corporates because I was always on tour. So I want them to feel. Actually, what I want them to do is I want the person who booked it to get the kudos for everyone going, I can't believe you managed to get this guy. So at the beginning of the show, I've got a little opening video which shows off, like, makes people think, oh, this guy's amazing. And then I come on and I sort of undercut that because I always play underdog on things, not the cartoon underdog. But then just to like build people in that idea, like, yeah, that's what I used to do. Now look at it. I'm in my home. Right. Hello. Yeah, we all, that thing. But just connecting people and being human with them is so important rather than performing at them, perform with them.
And everybody gets it. Everybody used to do something that they're not doing anymore. And we reference it in our shows. We say all the time, like, we're like, we've all gone through different things this year, like we use the virtual magic as a hook point for a third of the damn tricks because they're stuck in their house. You're stuck in your house. It's the elephant in the room. Why like completely pretend that it doesn't exist? And that's the elephant in the room. Like, hey, we're stuck in our house. Like, what the heck? So yeah,
why not do so? Like, it's that thing like I said earlier about go beyond that first thought. It's like nothing annoys me more than this phrase. And there's a lot of things that I think about this phrase. I had a dream last night and I woke up and I wrote down what was in that dream. Now I wrote it down and put it in this, like, just go beyond that thought. It's lazy. There are a million other ways you can get to that moment.
At the very least, say that you went for a walk outside, or
yes. Yeah, just think beyond that thought. What's something personal to you? No one cares that you had a, like, there's literally, there's nothing, no one's ever wanted to hear what anyone else's dream was. No one cares about your dream. Whatever your dream is, no one gives a shit. No one cares at all. If someone comes to me and actually on tour, I'll be like, I had this weird dream last night. Don't care.
No thanks.
I don't care. No, thank you. But I think equally with virtual, like, you've got all these opportunities that you would never have in the real world. So why aren't we exploiting? Like I see, all of this, and a lot of people are exploiting it brilliantly. The idea that people are in their house, you can see their background. That's the stuff you can, I've got like, through ad libs, I've ended up writing like 10 really solid jokes about various backgrounds, and 95% of the time I'll use 3 of those jokes per show because they'll be the sort of background that allows those jokes, and then it feels like it's ad libbed and connected. The fact that you can be like, all right, go grab something from your kitchen, bring it here now. Okay, you got 2 types of food, hide them under the like, when could you do that in the
never,
real world?
ever,
like, all
ever,
of that
ever.
stuff.
And what you just said about the background is totally true. Like, and Ben and I talk about this all the time in a theater show. You're looking at the audience, like, what can I say? Like, hey, Greg, nice shirt. Right. But in a virtual show, like, oh my God, I can see your dog, like I can see everything. So what I can intuit and joke and play with about everybody is 10 times more than what I can in a show where the lights are on my face. I can't see anyone in the crowd. I can just see
you're just pretending.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm saying something. Oh, nice hat.
Just making it up. Like, don't look at me like that, guy in the front row. Just making it up.
But that's so much the joy of it. Yeah. And that's, that's where the real fun in it comes in. Because you never get those opportunities otherwise. And you realize the more you do it, the better you get, and you find your little things, and you find things that seem to happen every time in the same way you do on stage. And then you build this bank of stuff that's within you and feels totally fresh and new to them. But, this experience has happened before. It's like, if there's an animal on screen, I always make a big deal. Like, I've got a little graphic that'll come up and be like, we found a dog. And because it's exciting. Everyone's like, oh my God, dog on Instagram.
Yeah,
so
we do.
The name of a dog.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
There's no trick about it, but it's just like...
But we spotlight the dog. People love it. Yeah, they love it.
Exactly, because people will think that same... if you're just getting to the thought just ahead of them and you can then do something fun with it, then people love that.
Dude, I love it. I've been really enjoying virtual shows and been able to have a lot of fun like this. So it's been a lot of fun, doing these things. And you know what? Just like what you said, I think this last year for me has been probably the most creative, like 15 months, of my life. The amount of material and content that I've put out in the last 15 months compared to the previous 15 months is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I think everybody, because a lot of us were forced to create, everybody in a way has like made more magic and made some other stuff. So been really, really exciting to see. Man, this has been amazing. We've talked about so many different things. It's been a ton of fun. We are getting towards the end of the episode, the wrap up, and there's the
world famous wrap up questions.
The world famous wrap up questions. Well, you basically know them, but
I've listened to so many times. I've listened to this podcast and I've always been like, I wonder what I would answer at this point. And I always thought, it'll come to me in a time. So now I'm genuinely terrified what I'm going to answer.
Now's your chance. So, the first is the endless chain. So to keep the podcast going on for eternity, who would be a phenomenal guest to have on the podcast that A, we haven't had on, and B, you can put us in contact with? It's always a rule.
Okay, I'm going to splurge a list of names at you, people who I thought, this is the one thing I've thought about. I'm like, who are the people that I feel like I get a lot from when I talk to them? So here come a list of names. Mark Kalin, Jonathan Goodwin, Andy Nyman, Morgan and West, Tyler Morgan, Noel Quarter, and Young and Strange.
Only Morgan and West we've had on, so that's a phenomenal. You
have had Morgan
list.
and West, yeah. You can get rid of them.
Yeah, but that's a phenomenal list, and I love it. That's going to be very, very helpful. So thank you.
And also Paul DeBeck. Paul
DeBeck. Thank you. The next thing is about modern magic. So, what is one thing going on in the world of modern magic right now that you like, and one thing going on in the world of magic right now that you don't like?
I like that people are taking risks and thinking differently, and the pandemic's made them do that. I think it's so easy to get stuck in a rut and do the same thing. And, I'm very guilty of this myself. I know I've been doing the same set on tour for 5 years. I mean, that set has got better and better and changed incrementally, but I've not done anything really new. And the reason I haven't done anything new is because I've not really had a deadline to do it. And the Zoom shows have made that happen. And I think actually having enforced deadlines is a useful thing, at least for me. But actually, I can see people, I see people starting to think differently, and that's from seeing performers who are performing differently and trying out new things. And I think that is a positive thing. And also it feels like there are more people that are caring not less about the tricks, but are caring as much about the performance than they are about the tricks. And actually I think that, to me, that's where magic is at its best, is when it's, I care more about the performance than the tricks.
Love that.
And I think that is a good ratio.
And in terms of something you don't like?
Oh, there's a lot. The phrase "I had a dream last night." Anything where you just don't go past. You at least don't. The first thought might be right that you have, but actually go past that thought and explore some other thoughts, because it can lead you on a path where you don't know where you're going to go. It's like I think just. And I say it's because I find myself doing it, and I'm guilty of it myself, and I hate it in myself, is like a laziness to some extent. Of there is a time where that'll do is totally good enough. Like, again, like that'll do sometimes is perfectly fine. But actually, if you can go beyond that'll do, then I think that's good. And there is I think having taught this through, I've come down to what I think the problem I hate is that you think the trick is enough, and the trick is just the starting point. You think just because you can do the thing, an audience are going to enjoy it. And a lot of the time they will, but they'll enjoy it a lot more if you do something better with it. A card trick, people enjoy a card trick more if you throw some glitter at the end. And that's just because you've added something to it. I think the trick is never enough. So it's just thinking beyond more just, I'm going to do this. And
just to comment on that, I feel like even still for myself in the creation process, and because I've referred to this a few times, and hopefully someone wants to join us, go to YouTube, Toronto Magic Company, but the Tarbell Challenge, I realized exactly the same thing happened, which is I spent all my effort working on the trick. And then I was like, oh, right. It's only half the battle. And I still do it every single time, where I set up to work on something and I work on it and I got it. And then I go and I'm like, wait, I didn't work on any of the important stuff. And then after I show it to people the first time, then I end up going and working on all the stuff that I never did. So I think that's that
is a good system, though. That idea, if I'm trying something new, I'll just do the bare bones of a trick. Be like, does that work? Yep. Great. Now how do I make a thing? And actually, you've just connected a thing in my head. What you've made me realize, which I'd never realized before, is that earlier I was talking about my time in radio and trying to find returnable features. So I wrote this stupid song for Hugh Jackman. It did really well. That became a feature called Surprise Karaoke, where we would do that for guests that came in. And I was like, what do I do in magic like that? We talked about like, I found my hook of not caring what people think. And I go, my hook is my reader who can't read minds / I touch you, I make a connection, we get in sync.
Right.
And therefore that is my returnable feature. That's the thing that I come back to. So I can take any trick and put that lens on it, and suddenly it's my trick and it feels different to everything else. And it's done that hard work is now less hard work because I've got a prism to look through. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think that is a really, really good message for people to understand, which is that, like, you know, coming up with your own magic may not be so much as every single trick you have to like build from the ground up. Yes, you do. But really what you have to do is you have to put it through the machine of you know, and get all the you all over it. Right. So really it's just got to go through the you machine. And I love the way that you've put it of like, you know, repeatable things. And I think that we all will eventually start to do it when we start to create magic, and sometimes it's a bad thing. You know, like I know some mentalists, they do it and they go, crap, they're all prediction effects that all look exactly the same because it's got the same formula, you know? But I think that what you just said is like building some of those formulas for ourselves is a really, really easy way to make magic more creative and more original without feeling like, okay, you know, Bill and Lemon, what now? You know, like to be able to put it through the way that we do things. So I think that's super, super helpful. The next question is about plugs. Where can people find you on the internet?
I am on the internet. You can find me at magiccox.com or facebook.com/ilovecox or Big Cox on Twitter. Spell it correctly, although I do own the other websites. They're just a very different thing. It's COX. I'm also, fingers crossed, COVID willing, back in London's West End at the Palace Theatre, which is where I normally am part of the magic team on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. That's still not open at the minute, but we're going to be back there doing a show called Wonderment, which is a magic and variety show over the summer. I can't wait to get back on stage. So if you listen to this and you come to see the show, drop me a mail. I will say hello. It'd be nice to meet people from a safe distance.
Amazing. Well, that's amazing. Congrats on the tour. My fingers and toes are all crossed, but coming back. Congrats on that. The last thing is the take-home point. People have listened to us talk about a ton of different stuff. This has been really in-depth. I've really enjoyed it. A million different things. If there's one thing people think back to this episode to remember one important thing, what is that one important thing?
See, I listen to people give these and I think, oh, that's so smart. That's such a clever thing that they've distilled all their thinking to one thought. And I struggle to distill my thinking because I feel my thinking is a process which continues and it's never set. And that same way I sort of mentioned that I'm not proud of some of the stuff I did earlier. At the time, I probably was proud of it, but you're constantly changing. And actually, maybe that's a thing to take home, is that who you are now isn't who you were and who you're going to be, but who you are now is what you've got to work with. And actually finding out who you are as a performer is more important than anything else, and finding out that character, and that leads to everything else. And it's finding the things about you that people like and highlighting them, maybe, or finding the thing that you want to make an audience feel or enjoy, or, you know, finding your way of doing stuff. And, you know, my sensibility is always fun, silly, stupid, and my magic is, you know, often undermined by that. I should be getting stronger reactions for things, but for me, I know my starting point is not on finding that. It's not as much on the strong reaction as it is for the enjoyable journey to get there. So it's finding out what things are you, what do you enjoy? What do you like? What do you think you want to do? And finding your ways to present that to an audience. And you'll learn very quickly whether they think similarly to you and they want to see that or not. And kind of listening to your audience. We didn't really get into this, so this is an additional point. But the idea, like, I feel I know where all my beats are on stage, and I can judge the sense of a room because I play to, you know, if I'm playing to, like, weirdly, this sounds so horribly egotistical, but if I'm playing to less than 1,000 people, I find it a weird gig because all the little things are a bit off. Because I've been, you know, it's a horrible thing to say, but I've been lucky that that's the you know, those audiences, and everything. Maybe it's a little slow or a little quiet, but, you know, virtually it was building those new skill sets. And you're constantly a magician. You're a problem solver as a magician, both in terms of creating and performing. And I realized that actually I've got the best thing ever. I record every Zoom call. I can just watch the audience. I listen to my audio and watch them, and I can see where they're switched off and turned on. And those sorts of things. It's listening and knowing your audience will tell you quite quickly guide you on the way you want to go. So lots of take home points, none of them what I've said in the conversation. Again, if anyone can work out what I'm trying to say here, please let me know.
No, you know what? I think you did share a lot of important things there. And specifically, one of the things that we came to, towards the end of this is this concept of figuring out who your character is the tool that will help dictate what your magic looks like when you put into the world. And it'll certainly, especially to comment on, the original story with Darren, it'll certainly steer you away from being other people is by putting it through the lens of yourself. And one of the corollaries of what you're talking about is that, we do kind of have to go out there, try the thing that we think is the right thing, and then think about, magic philosophy for a little bit, after we do that, and then say to ourselves, hey, do I really believe this? Does this really work for me? Is this really the way I do it? And that's how we say to ourselves, no, I don't want people to think that I'm a mind reader. I want people to, or no, I don't want to be doing magic with eggs. That doesn't make any sense, whatever. So I think we kind of have to go and do it and feel feelings about it, and that'll help us, decide what we'll never, ever do again, ever. And what we love doing and what kind of equations for our tricks we like to stick with.
And it's all of that comes down to taking that risk. And it's harder the more you go on in your life and career to take those risks. So if you're young, use that superpower now where you can just take a risk and not think of it as taking a risk. Exploit risk taking wherever you can. And if you can make it a safe risk and mitigate your risks within that risk, I've said risk a lot there, then that is a smart thing to do. But you don't know unless you try it.
Well, this has been a phenomenal episode. Thank you for all of the advice, all of the wisdom, and especially getting vulnerable about what went on in the beginning and also just what this whole journey has been like. It's really, really fun to hear behind the scenes, and for me to go full circle to one of the people who I discovered on YouTube when I was falling in love with magic in the first place.
I did always wonder who the viewer was. I had that one view and I finally found it. Thank goodness.
That was me. I was the guy. I was Card Tricks 222. No, whatever. Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, if you liked the episode, podcasts are weird. What? Yeah, if you like the episode, podcasts are really weird and they're hard to share. So you have to actually share them. Tell a friend, tell somebody, post about it on social media. People don't share podcasts the way they share YouTube videos and stuff like that. So if you're here, do me a favor and share it if you liked it. That's number one. Number two, Chris was a part of Upgrade Academy, helped grow his virtual magic business during the pandemic. So if that's something you need help with, go to discourseinmagic.com/upgrade and you can send me a message, say hello, and we'll see if I can help. Other than that, thanks for being here. I will see you next Thursday. Peace.